without whose gracious supportiveness this entire conference would not have happened. Welcome. I'd like to welcome all my students and friends, and this paper is dedicated to all my sisters, and there are many. Okay. The title of the paper is The Psychoethics of Beauty. Oh, speaking of sisters, I'm the last of 4 sisters, and I'm accustomed to coming last and to getting a lot of pressure put on me to conform. Where the time is concerned, this is relevant, the timing. Okay. Please note that I often use the word beauty in this paper, and in this delivery, and I'm using it with a lot of irony, and in quotation marks on paper. In other words, the subtitle of this paper is, Can We Trust Beauty? My father had 4 daughters. I think he probably wanted 4 sons. I was the last chance for a daughter. Okay, then for a son, sorry, another daughter, good grief. He taught us this poem. I'm sure it was written by a male writer. 3 cups the fates before me set. 1 I might choose, the other 2 refuse. First, fame filled the first, a blood-red wine. Next came wealth, a wine of sheer delight. Mellow and old, all dreams were answered in that cup of gold. Beauty was last, a sheer white wine. Doubt was past. I was a woman, and I chose the last. Now, this poem, written by a male poet and taught to us by our father, was indoctrinating or spreading the word on what is actually one of the basic premises taught to women within Western, or is it all societies, namely that beauty, in quotation marks, is the primary, the most important value that women can bring to the table of life and of society. Aha! A delicious life lesson, surely? Dubious too? Daily, in male-oriented societies, we are surrounded by what Susan Faludi has called the beauty industry, what Naomi Wolf has called the beauty myth. This is beauty as destiny, beauty as fate, beauty as a trap, beauty as deception, beauty as obsession, beauty as a myth, as narcissism, as youth, as anorexia, beauty as bulimia, beauty as racism and sexism, and of course, beauty as a multi-trillion-dollar industry and growing every second. Yes. In other words, seldom do we see beauty as an ethical thing connected to an internal ethic or psychoethic, if you want to call it that, an ethical system that individuals themselves arrive at without coercion by society, but of course in line with individual conscience and individual self-acceptance. My question is, why? As Susan Faludi, Jean Kilburn, Toni Morrison, Naomi Wolf, Nancy Friday, Susan Brown Miller, et al. Have indicated, this is a worldwide problem, and it makes women vulnerable to all forms of abuse. Call it rape as a metaphor for abuse. In fact, Hollywood, the makeup industry, the spa industry, the hair industry, the fingernail industry, the skin bleaching industry, the sun tanning industry, don't forget that one, etc., and more and more and more, are part of this compulsory mystique of beauty, in quotation marks. And it overrides, indeed, the overarching concept of beauty in mythology. Remember Helen of Troy, the face that launched 1,000 ships. Okay. Thus, the beauty mystique, one may call it, is in fact a form of tyranny, as Glenda Sims called it years ago in Canada. Furthermore, it opens the door to narcissism and abuse and abusive lifestyles. And of course, this, interestingly enough, crosses cultures and societies today, precisely because of its mercenary quality. This beauty phenomenon ignores and warps other ethical systems, and in actual fact has one ethical system of its own that it enforces. This is a rules-based authoritarian system which flashes constantly one message, namely, be beautiful for life, but be beautiful as we define beauty. This, of course, opens the door to immense debt, yes, from the adherents of the beauty myth, and on the other hand, of course, has fueled the growth in the plastic surgery industry, which has surpassed all other areas of medicine, including the baby business, which used to be the big one. Yes. As such, then, we speak language enforces this bias and this obsession. You notice that we speak of a beautiful woman, but we speak of men as beautiful, a beautiful person, suggesting the wholeness of the male. Need I say more? But that's another discussion. Yeah. Okay. There is a mind-numbing, endless trail of stereotypes, mythologies, lies, illusions, delusions, entrapments, and neuroses enforced, yes, by this beauty myth, if you want to call it that, or what Faludi calls this universal standard. Yes. This, of course, includes racism and sexism, of course. This dictate calls for what? An impossible homogenization of beauty. Yes? As Mr. Raphael Elias, one of our students in the third year course, puts it, the legs of this one, the hair of this one, the complexion of that one, the bosom of that one, and of course the you-know-what of that one. Yes, yes, yes. Indeed, then, it also alienates women from their bodies, and as such, then, it denies them. It ignores the rights-based system by denying them the right to look like themselves. Now, as Toni Morrison has pointed out in her important work, a very poignant work, The Bluest Eye, when this universal norm is imposed on black and colored women in America, for instance, where the beauty norm is strident, you can't ignore it. Every time you press a button, it hits you. Yes? Okay. She points out in the novel, The Bluest Eye, she shows the alienation, the dual alienation, really, of the young African-American child who longs to be loved by her abused and abusive parents, and who believes that if she had blue eyes, the bluest eyes like perhaps her Dolly's eyes, the bluest eyes like maybe Cinderella's eyes, maybe Dolly Parton's eyes, yes, she would be loved. But it's possible to get the bluest eyes, of course. Indeed, however, the tragic life and death of the ultimate blonde bombshell, yes? The woman that Neil Diamond may have called the blonde-haired, blue-eyed beauty queen. The tragic life and death of, guess who? Marilyn Monroe. Speaks to us then that this dual alienation does not relate only to women of color or to black women. Indeed, then, though we may laugh at this beauty myth and think, how chaotic, how irritating, but how funny, there is nothing funny or amusing about its psychological and psychic impacts. And then, of course, there is Eldridge Cleaver in the 60s, who spoke of the African-American woman as the Amazon, the woman on whom dishpan hands could not possibly seem out of place. Good grief. Where was her manicurist? Yes. We know that the fingernail business is big business and booming, like the rest of the beauty industry. As such, then, we have to understand that beauty cannot be trusted. Yes, and it must be seen under a very analytic light. Why? Because, of course, the beauty industry brainwashes its victims, and its victims are not all women. Let's remember that. Men, too, are assaulted by this beauty myth in various ways. It opens the door to abusive lifestyles, self-rejection, and finally all forms of suicide. But then, let us not forget the impacts of Revlon, Avon, L'Oreal, and the other trillion-dollar industries whose wise, usually male leaders understood the importance of diversity. And as such then began to create products that hit all types of women, all variations of victims. Yes, they were buyers. They had credit cards. Yes, even if they didn't have cash. Furthermore, as such then, the beauty industry's cash registers kept jingling. Yes? But then along came people like Eartha Kitt. Most of you are too young to know about her. Cicely Tyson, Jennifer Lopez, Iman, Beyonce, Michelle Obama, Naomi Campbell, and most recently, Lupita Nyong'o, who all proved, as if with one accord, that beauty is unique. But beauty is differentness allied with self-acceptance. Let us turn then to the often patronized sister discipline of the social sciences, literature. It's seen as a feminine discipline. I wonder why. Yes, literature too has her say. And here in Cayman, in the Caribbean context, Roy Budden has created in his recent collection, A Gathering of Old Men, a version of a female character who, yes, is beautiful and desired, that goes without saying, on the island. But she's more than that. Budden wisely spends little time or few words discussing what this lady looks like. She is well named Pearlie. What he does is draw a portrait of a woman who maintains self-esteem and self-respect, regardless of the intra-gender sexism that is exerted against her by what we might call the female mafia, the female competitors for male attention. And, of course, regardless of the intra-race prejudice that mars her environment. Her name is Pearlie, and we consider her the pearl of great price. Similarly, in the Bahamas, Patricia Glinton McAuliffe, some years ago, in her folk stories that parallel Budden's collection, An Evening in Guanima, showed us the version of the so-called beautiful man. He's a beautiful island man who is desired, but he's a sexual predator. He seeks his perfect trophy wife, as, Thorstein Veblen has originally defined the trophy wife, and he finds it in the beautiful stranger. She is his perfect match. He is a sexual predator. She is a monster in disguise, the galling wife. The message here is, be careful what you want when it comes to beauty. You may get it, or it may get you. As such, then, we are aware, as Mr. Josh Prius, second-year student, has articulated in our literature class, that beauty is essentially a quality of the spirit. Yes. And that there are levels in human existence that actually connect this physical and the metaphysical worlds, despite the real attractions of the body. But we are more than bodies, we are more than walking skins. A fact that the beauty industry, of course, ignores. Indeed, then, in Victorian times, this was before gay rights, the then notorious, now beloved writer Oscar Wilde in a haunting novel that Hollywood keeps rediscovering. Yes? But with great profit. Yes? The picture of Dorian Gray defined for us that connection between our metaphysical and physical selves and the dangers of accepting a version of physical beauty that is not connected to ethics, virtues, or values. And this, of course, is symbolized for us in this haunting portrait, which captures the beautiful young man in all his glory, but which actually becomes a conscience and an alter ego that chronicles in horrid, ugly detail the connection between his visible beauty and his real psychopathy. In other words, it's a prophetic portrait of the psychopath. Good literature does have that prophetic quality, doesn't it? As such, then, we're aware that the message we get, again, is that there is nothing more ugly than the beautiful person, physically beautiful, who lacks values and ethics. And as such, then, can beauty be trusted? Conclusively, then, such literary portraits and insights into beauty itself are offered to us timelessly by the power of literature. As we said, literature has this intuitive, prophetic, and aphoristic quality. It's an often patronized discipline. But like all other aspects of feminine experience or female experience, it stands its ground. Nonetheless, it is from this gentle discipline, literature, that we get poetry. And poetry offers us some of the truest ethics of real beauty, namely the essential recognition of Mother Nature's beauty as the fundamental, timeless, eternal bedrock of true beauty. This is the beauty we often bypass, as if blind to it, ironically enough. And of course, Shakespeare had his comment too. Never forget him. Yes. In Sonnet 94, he commented on the horrible dualism of beauty without ethics, beauty without values, and beauty without integrity, as follows. For sweetest things turn sourest by their deeds. Lilies that fester smell far worse than weeds. You notice the nature imagery appropriately used. Conversely, the terminally ill poet, British poet of the 1820s, John Keats, reassured us, beauty is truth, truth, beauty. Meanwhile, closer to home, the Caribbean Nobel Prize winner Derek Walcott reminds us of the transcendent power and gorgeousness of our Caribbean landscape. We live, as Walcott told us, cradled, disciplined, nurtured, and charmed in a green night. Thank you very much.
I just want to say thank you to all our presenters. And